Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. I know that it's only been a couple weeks since I posted my last video, but I have 3 exciting things to share with you today, and I just can't wait any longer to share them. One, you might notice, is this English paper piecing quilt top that I have finished. The other, you might also notice that I have some wool fiber to share because Tour de Fleece is getting closer. And the final one is something I've been doing behind the scenes. It has nothing to do with fiber and fabric, but it has given me great joy and a lot of fun creating it, and I want to be able to share with you. So let's go ahead and dive right in, and we'll start with the English paper piecing quilt that is behind me. Those of you who have been watching me for a while will know that just over, I guess it's been almost a year and a half ago, give or take, I started working on English paper piecing. And I started sharing my sample blocks, my sampler blocks, with you in my Pithy Ponderings blog. The objective was to try to make these English paper piecing blocks using vintage fabric that I had collected years ago, most of which was given to me by friends who were destashing. The fabrics that I've used are almost entirely of a 1930s, 1940s era, with the exception of a few that are hand-dyed by me and a few that might be a little bit newer than that. But for the most part, they are all vintage fabrics from the 1930s and 1940s. I think they're predominantly a 1940s collection, but they are of, in most of the cases, they are of a looser weave. They are a bit of a thicker fabric than what we would normally consider quilting fabrics today. So I have this stash, and I've been trying to figure out a project to use it for many years now. And I guess we could say a year and a half ago, give or take, I decided to go ahead and try English paper piecing. Now, I have videos talking about it in the past that you can look at, and Google is pretty good at coming up with answers as to what English paper piecing is. But the long and short of it is that unlike standard template piecing, in this case, you're using pieces of paper or cardstock. You are basting, whether it is by thread or glue, the individual little pieces of the block to the template. Then you are stitching, little whip stitches, stitching the pieces together, forming the overall block. And I had never tried this technique, at least not in a large project. I fell in love with it. I really enjoyed it. It probably did add to some of the shoulder and back pain that I ended up doing therapy last year for. But it was a delight, and it was a wonderful way to use these vintage fabrics. Now, I will go ahead and put a picture here of the whole quilt so that you can see the whole quilt finished. The journey of doing these 30 or so blocks, it started with the idea, as I said, to give paper piecing, English paper piecing, a try. Now, I guess I should say, for those of you that are new to this subject, there is what we call English paper piecing and foundation paper piecing. I heard one quilter say, I'm not quite sure, a British quilter, wonder why we called it English paper piecing as opposed to just paper piecing. Well, foundation paper piecing is another type of using paper to get really precise corners and points. They are very different techniques. English paper piecing is much more the traditional using templates, and in this case, leaving the template in until you sew together your pieces, and then only removing the paper templates when you are ready to sandwich the entire quilt together. In fact, there are cases where there are quilt tops that are found or quilts that are found in which the newsprint that was used as the template was actually left in as another warm layer. I would imagine that if the quilt had been washed, the paper would eventually disintegrate and blend itself in with whatever the batting fibers were. But English paper piecing is much more of a traditional style than I think the foundation paper piecing. With that being said, so that all my quilter friends out there don't scream at me, foundation paper piecing is actually also a very old and traditional way of doing blocks, especially blocks like Crazy Patch, in which you are using a foundation, in the past, foundation fabric that you are sewing other fabrics on, with a little bit of a twist in the modern day, especially where we can reproduce the same pattern over and over and over again with copy machines and printers. So if you're interested in extremely precise quilting, you should, if you haven't already looked into it, look into English paper piecing and foundation paper piecing. English paper piecing is done by hand. Foundation paper piecing is usually now done by machine. There's the difference. All right, so I have my quilt. The top is ready. I'm going to probably, the day after posting this video, I'm going to probably go down to my long arm quilting machine, and I'm going to baste the backing, the batting, and this top together to make the quilt sandwich. Then I will take it off my long arm quilting machine and I will hand quilt it over the next many months, probably the next year. I know that I can quilt it faster, but we are going into summer and we're going into Tour de Fleece. So this is probably something that won't be completely finished for another year. And as soon as it is, I will be sure to show you the progress of it, and maybe even along the way show you some of the quilting that I'm doing. The majority of this is hand pieced. The patchwork of this is hand pieced, except, and this is one of the reasons I did delay, I kept going back and forth. Do I want to put the border sashes, these here? I couldn't decide if I wanted to do those also by hand or if I wanted to go to the sewing machine. And after much deliberation and a lot of physical therapy, in the end, it was much more expedient and prudent to go ahead and sew my sashing strips by machine and then sew them to the blocks by machine. So it is going to be probably a 90% hand stitch project, because I'll be hand quilting it as well. But there is some machine quilting or machine piecing that will go into this. And I will be using, as I said, my long arm to baste the layers together rather than pin basting, which I've done in the past on my big floor loom that I have. But it's rainy, it's early spring, and I'm not going outside to hand baste when I have a fabulous machine downstairs that I can do it in about an hour's time. It will take me probably as long to get it on the machine as it will for me to run the basting stitches. So that is my English paper piecing sampler quilt ready to share with you. All right, shifting topics. Let's talk about Tour de Fleece. Now, as I am the administrator now of the Tour de Fleece on Ravelry group, which, by the way, if you're on Ravelry and you'd like to help volunteer and be part of this as behind the scenes or moderating, contact me as Pithy Pondering on Ravelry. I would love to have more help if you want to work more behind the scenes as opposed to necessarily just in the spinning process. But Tour de Fleece is now a month and a half away. It starts on July 6th. And we've now opened up the wildcard team registration on Ravelry. I know that on the Facebook group, which I participate in, but I'm not a moderator or any of the administrators of that group. I'm just a participant. I know that the Facebook group has changed their name to the 2025, so they're up and running for the new Tour de Fleece season. Everyone is talking about the fibers that they want to spin, getting excited a month and a half out. I find it delightful. I think there's as much excitement in the run-up to Tour de Fleece as there is actually in the doing of Tour de Fleece. I think we all love the idea of collecting fibers and preparing fibers as much as we like spinning the fibers. In fact, I think in some cases we might actually like the purchasing and preparing of fibers more than we actually do like the spinning of the fibers. It's sometimes tough to tell. But this is the time when we can start saying, well, how much do we want to spend? We have some goals that we want to set. Do we want to join a team? Do we just want to share our pictures? How do we want to become involved in this big spinning event? I've started with some fibers that I am trying to destash. They're the last bits of a fleece that I had that I made on Ravelry. You can see it. It's called, and I think it's also on my pithyponderings.com. But I made a thing called the I made a sweater that's called the, I think, the I can't pronounce it, Boscask. It means wood, wooded area. And I can't pronounce the word today. I'm sorry, tongue-tied. But it is a sweater that I made for my son 3 years ago, I think. And he has kind of grown out of it. And my husband, who I actually tested it out on, it fits him really well. And so my husband, who modeled it for me, because my son was in Germany at the time and couldn't, it's now my husband's rather than my son's. But this is some of the fiber from the wool sheep, the sheep's wool that I spun this sweater. And I am sure I will have put the name of it above the video because, yes, the words are not my friend today. But this is the last bit of a CVM brown wool that was left over from that project. And that project, I blended mohair and I believe some alpaca in to change some of the color variation so that it's still a brown sweater, but it has some little peaks of other color. And so this is the last of that fleece that I had, and I spent some time carding up the brown. I carded up the brown fleece, and then I blended it on my blending board with some of that beautiful white mohair that I shared in my last video. And I have this lovely pile of squishy, spinnable worms, little rologs, off my blending board. So that is one of my spins. It's just over 5 ounces of fiber. And I also had, I'll pull this one. So that was, so what I had left over was 2, I think 3 ounce bundles of fiber that I hadn't used. And this was the better quality of the 2, same fleece, but on the fleece, there'll be sometimes a higher quality and a lesser quality depending on where it's coming on the sheep. This one was a little bit more slobby, a little bit more, little neps all through it. So this one, I'm going to probably blend it with some other CVM that's also a lighter color. So I have this beautiful dark brown, but I love having, when it spins, hints of other color so that it's not a solid mass of yarn, but a bit of a modeled mass of yarn. And so this one, I need to just now take to the blending board and blend. I'm going to blend it with a nice creamy taupe CVM that I also have. So I have that ready to go to be blending. I'm working on some others that I'm trying to decide what to do, trying to get some ready for new spinners, trying to help prepare the fibers for the other spinners in my house as well. So I have, here, I'll bring this back here to show. I have my big squishy pile of yarn or fiber worms, and they are ready to be spun. So that is my first ready to go for Tour de Fleece. And now I have to start thinking about all the other color. I've been reorganizing some of my stash because I did buy the new fleeces. I had to rearrange what was in my storage containers. I didn't want to have to buy many more storage containers, so I was trying to consolidate, decide what I'm going to do for Tour de Fleece. And so for this year Tour de Fleece, I expect to spin quantity. All things going as planned, knocking on some wood, is I do plan on doing a volume this year. Last year, I believe it was, I did a sweater spin, which I still need to actually knit up, but I'm glad I didn't get it knit up because I was going to make another sweater for my husband. And now it turns out, since he's getting the sweater I made before, I'm going to make another sweater for my son. In fact, I may get a sweater started and see if he will use that yarn to make himself his first sweater. So lots of things in the motion, lots of things going on behind the scenes, but I had to show you my wonderful squishy fiber. It is now the middle of May, and it is time to start talking about Tour de Fleece. Things will get more and more exciting as we get closer to July. We still have to get even into June, let alone through June. But the time can go very, very quickly, especially when you are trying to prep large quantities of fiber. I have a couple fibers that I really do want to do some dye work with. I always like to have some color going into Tour de Fleece. I also like to have usually a theme going into Tour de Fleece. And the other day I had a theme and then I kind of lost it. So still working through some of my final details of what my goals are. My big goal is to try to do a video of some sort every day and to definitely spin every day. That is my big goal. So, squishy fiber. And keeping this one to a shorter video than the one that I did before, because we have the 3 things. So the first thing is my exciting news about having my quilt top put together. The second one is Tour de Fleece is up and running for the prep time and my squishy first fiber. And then the final one. Those of you who've been following along know that I started doing Dungeons and Dragons with my family. And I got really excited in both being a DM and doing content creation. And this week I published on Dungeon Masters Guild. I published my first little tiny content. And I have it listed on Dungeon Masters Guild. I have it listed as pay what you want and a price that I value it at. It's going to be one of the first, I plan on making 3 things that will eventually be bundled with this. But this is the first piece, and it is the Gregori house. I will bring up, actually, I will just put a picture of the cover right here because it will look much better. It is the Gregori house, and it is, as I put it at the back, it is a boarding house in Waterdeep, but it can be located anywhere you'd want to place it. I have NPCs, and I have maps, and I have fun little creatures, both of the quote-unquote monster type. I don't make really big baddie monsters yet. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to do that. It's fun. I'm definitely making things that would be considered family fun and family friendly. Just trying to have a little whimsy in my own games that we're playing with my group, and sharing that work with others. So I will have the links to this in the description below. I'll have the links, of course, to my Ravelry account, so you can find me there if you are curious about the Tour de Fleece. I will have the links to some of, to my English paper piecing. There will be a blog that will go out with that. All of that will be in the description below for you to take a look at if you're interested. But I am really pleased with getting this little tiny publication. It's not a very big thing, just a few pages, lots of, you know, little pictures and maps and stat blocks. But it's been just a lot of fun, and it's been fun expanding the way that I use my creativity, the way that I share my creativity with others. And that is what I wanted to be able to bring together in this little video here in the middle of the month. And we are going to get a cat visiting. I've had cats come around as I was setting up, but it looks like Whimsy may or may not come and see me before the video is over. But I wanted to share all that with you. I am trying to find joy every day. I try to give myself a chance to rest a little bit more, trying to avoid a repeat of what led me to having the need for all the physical therapy last year. And there's a cat nose checking out the camera, so sorry about the wobble. And so that is my video for today. My 3 announcements, my 3 things that I am doing, the 3 things that, in addition to my family and friends, give me a great deal of joy and satisfaction. I'm using old techniques and new techniques, and learning things and refreshing my memory on how to do things and enjoying it. So hopefully you have been inspired by some of this. Again, there will be links in the description below, and feel free to go and check out my free, or not now, somewhat free content if you're interested in it. All of these patterns are available for free on my pithyponderings.com. This is available from Dungeon Master Guild. And of course, there's Ringo. I can be found on Ravelry as Pioneer Lady. All right, well, we will see you probably in a few short weeks as we get a little bit closer and ready to do more Tour de Fleece. Until then, happy unwinding with fiber and fabric, and we'll see you soon.